There are people you meet and forget the next day. And then there are people who change your life without even trying. This story is about one of those people. To this day, I still remember the exact moment I saw her for the first time. It wasn't anything dramatic. No slow motion, no movie scene, no romantic music playing in the background. Just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting alone in a small cafe near the city center, pretending to study for an exam that I had absolutely no interest in. My laptop was open, my coffee was getting cold, and my attention was everywhere except on the screen. That's when the door opened. A girl walked in, dark hair, gray hoodie, a camera hanging from her shoulder. She looked around for a place to sit. For some reason, I noticed her immediately. Not because she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. It was something else. She looked comfortable being herself, like she wasn't trying to impress anyone. A few seconds later, she accidentally dropped a notebook while walking past my table. Papers scattered across the floor. I stood up automatically. Here, I said, helping her pick them up. She smiled. Thank you. That would have taken forever. Her smile was warm, the kind that makes you smile back without realizing it. No problem. She glanced at my laptop, studying, pretending to. She laughed. And for some reason, that tiny laugh stayed in my head long after she sat down. I thought that would be the end of it. A random interaction. Nothing more. But life had other plans. A week later, I saw her again, this time in a bookstore. I was looking through the fiction section when I heard a familiar voice behind me. You don't seem like the reading type. I turned around. It was her, the girl from the cafe. I laughed. And you don't seem like the judging strangers type. She grinned. Fair point. For the next 20 minutes, we wandered through the bookstore talking about books neither of us had actually finished. When we finally walked outside, the sun was beginning to set. Well, she said, it was nice seeing you again. Again, I asked, so you want a third meeting? I pretended to think. Maybe. She rolled her eyes. Then she pulled out her phone. Fine. Give me your number. I try not to look too excited. That night we texted until almost 2 in the morning. Then the next night. And the next. At first, it was random conversations. Movies. Music. Funny stories. Childhood memories. Nothing important. But somehow those conversations became the best part of my day. Every time my phone lit up with her name, I felt happier than I wanted to admit. A month passed. By then, we were talking every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes about absolutely nothing. One evening, she sent me a photo of the sunset from a hill outside the city. Beautiful orange clouds stretched across the sky. Wish you were here, she texted. I stared at the message. My heart immediately started making assumptions my brain was trying to stop. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I replied, maybe next time. A minute later, she sent, it's a date. I smiled for almost an hour after reading that. The following Saturday, we went there together. The hill overlooked the entire city. The lights below looked like tiny stars. She was taking photographs while I sat on the grass beside her. At one point, she lowered the camera and looked at me. You know something? What? You listen better than most people. I laughed. That's a weird compliment. No, most people wait for their turn to talk. You actually listen. For a second, neither of us said anything. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt comfortable, dangerously comfortable. And that was the moment I realized I was starting to fall for her. Not a little, a lot. A few days later, something happened that changed everything. We were walking through the city after grabbing coffee. She suddenly stopped when her phone rang. I noticed the smile on her face disappear. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, she said quickly. Too quickly. She answered the call and walked a few steps away. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard enough. I'll be there soon. Pause. No, nothing's wrong. Another pause. Then, I love you too. My stomach dropped. After she told me about her boyfriend, I tried to convince myself that nothing had changed. But everything had. Every conversation suddenly felt different. Every joke had a hidden meaning. Every smile felt dangerous. And yet neither of us stopped talking. One Saturday morning, she texted me, "Do you want to come with me somewhere?" I stared at the message. Where? It's a surprise. Normally, I hated surprises. But when it came to her, I would have agreed to almost anything. An hour later, we were on a train heading toward a small town outside the city. She sat by the window, taking photos of fields, trees, and old buildings. "You really take pictures of everything," I said. She laughed. "Because one day these moments disappear. Photos disappear too." She looked at me. "Not if they matter." For some reason, that answer stayed with me all day. We spent hours walking through narrow streets and old parks. At one point, she stopped near a bridge and pointed her camera at me. "What are you doing?" "Taking your picture." "Why?" She smiled. "Because one day you'll be famous." I laughed. "Trust me, that's not happening." "Then I'll keep the picture anyway." That should have felt innocent, but it didn't. Not to me. Because nobody takes photos of someone they don't care about. Or at least that's what I wanted to believe. Later that evening, we sat near the river eating cheap ice cream. The sun was beginning to disappear. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect. And that's when her phone rang. She immediately looked uncomfortable. I already knew who it was. Her boyfriend. She answered. Her voice changed. Not dramatically, just enough for me to notice. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. When she hung up, neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked, "Is everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah," but I knew she was lying. The train ride home was quieter than before, and for the first time, I realized something painful. No matter how close we became, there would always be someone else waiting for her at the end of the day. Someone who wasn't me. A few weeks later, things became even more complicated. One night, she called me unexpectedly. Her voice sounded nervous. "Can you meet me?" "Now, please." 20 minutes later, I found her sitting alone outside a cafe. Her eyes were red. "What happened?" She looked away. "We had a huge fight." "About what?" She hesitated, then said, "About you." The words hit me like a truck. "What do you mean?" "He thinks I spend too much time talking to you." I didn't know what to say, because deep down, he was wrong. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me. "Do you think he's right?" That question terrified me, because there was only one honest answer. "Maybe." She lowered her eyes. For the first time, she didn't argue. That silence told me everything. After that night, things changed again. Not better, not worse, just different. We became more careful, but somehow even closer. Like two people trying to ignore a fire while standing right next to it. Then came my birthday. I wasn't planning anything special, just dinner with a few friends. Nothing more. Around midnight, everyone left. I was cleaning up when my phone buzzed. A message from her. "Look outside." Confused, I walked to the window. She was standing across the street, holding a small gift bag. I immediately ran downstairs. "What are you doing here?" She smiled. "I wanted to give this to you in person." Inside the bag was an old camera. Not expensive, not new, but beautiful. I looked at her. "You love photography. Why would you give this away?" She shrugged. "Because I think you'll take care of it." For a second, I couldn't speak. Nobody had ever given me something that personal before. And that scared me, because gifts like that create memories. And memories are difficult to forget. The following months became the happiest and most painful period of my life. We talked almost every day, saw each other constantly, shared things nobody else knew. Sometimes it felt like we were already together. And then reality would suddenly return. A text from her boyfriend, a phone call, a mention of future plans that didn't include me. Every time that happened, it felt like waking up from a dream. One evening, while walking through the city, she suddenly asked, "Do you ever wish you met someone at a different time?" I laughed quietly. "Every day." She didn't laugh back. She just nodded. and kept walking, as if she understood exactly what I meant. I froze. For a second, I convinced myself I had heard it wrong. Maybe she was talking to a family member, maybe a friend, maybe anyone except who I thought she was talking to. But deep down, I already knew. When she came back, she smiled. Sorry about that. I tried to smile back. Everything okay? She nodded. Yeah. But neither of us mentioned the call. Not that day. Not the next day. Not for an entire week. And every day that passed made me more afraid of asking. Because as long as I didn't ask, there was still a chance I was wrong. Then one evening, she finally told me. We were sitting near the river, watching boats move slowly through the water. The sun was setting. People were walking by. Everything looked peaceful. And then she said, "There's something I should have told you earlier." My heart immediately sank. I already knew. I just didn't want to hear it. She looked down at the water. I have a boyfriend. There it was. Simple. Direct. 4 words. And somehow those 4 words hurt more than anything I had heard in years. I stared ahead. Try not to show it. Try not to let my voice shake. How long? Almost 2 years. 2 years. Not 2 weeks. Not 2 months. 2 years. I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. I'm sorry, she said. I looked at her. For what? For not telling you sooner. The strange thing was, I wasn't angry. I wanted to be, but I wasn't. I was just disappointed, mostly in myself, because I had allowed myself to imagine things that were never real. After that conversation, I promised myself I would move on. And for a few days, I actually tried. I stopped texting first. I spent more time with friends. I focused on work. Anything to stop thinking about her. But then one night, my phone lit up. Her name. One message. Can I call you? I stared at the screen. I should have ignored it. Instead, I answered. And that was my mistake. We talked for 3 hours. 3 hours. About life. Dreams. Childhood memories. Fears. Things people usually tell someone they trust. When the call ended, I realized something terrible. I wasn't moving on. I was falling even deeper. Weeks passed, and things became complicated. She started sharing problems about her relationship, arguments, misunderstandings, long periods without talking. At first, I tried to stay neutral. I really did. But every time she talked about being unhappy, a small selfish part of me felt hopeful. I hated that feeling, but it was there. One evening she called me crying. I had never heard her cry before. Can you come? That was all she said. 20 minutes later, I was sitting beside her on a park bench. She looked exhausted. What happened? She wiped her eyes. We had another fight. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. For nearly 2 hours. At the end of the night, she leaned her head on my shoulder. Just for a moment. A few seconds. Maybe 10. But to me it felt like everything. And that was the problem. Every small thing meant too much. Months went by. Our friendship became stronger. Or at least that's what I told myself. The truth was much more dangerous. I was in love with her. Completely. And she knew it. She never said it out loud. But she knew. Sometimes she would look at me differently. Sometimes she would hold eye contact a little too long. Sometimes she would text me at midnight just because she couldn't sleep. And every time she did, I convinced myself there was still a chance. Then came the night that changed everything. We were walking through the city after dinner. The streets were nearly empty. Cold air, yellow streetlights. The kind of night that makes everything feel more emotional. She suddenly stopped walking. I turned toward her. What? She looked nervous. For the first time in months. I need to ask you something. Okay. She took a deep breath. If things were different, I felt my heartbeat speed up. If I had met you first. She paused, then looked away. Do you think we would have worked? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because it was the exact question I had been asking myself for months. Every single day, I finally answered. Yeah. She smiled sadly. So do I. And then she kept walking, leaving me standing there. completely destroyed, because that was the closest thing to a confession I would ever get. And it changed absolutely nothing. A few weeks later, she disappeared. Not completely, but enough. Short replies, long delays, no late night calls, no random messages. Something had changed. Eventually, I found out why. She and her boyfriend had decided to fix things, to start over, to give their relationship another chance. And honestly, I knew that was probably the right choice. But it still hurt. A lot. The last time we met was on a rainy afternoon. Neither of us planned it. We just happened to run into each other. For a few minutes, we stood there talking about ordinary things. Work, life, the weather. Anything except what we were both thinking about. Then she smiled. That same smile from the cafe. The same smile that had started everything. I'm glad I met you. I swallowed hard. Me too. She nodded, then took a step back, and another, until she finally turned around and walked away. I watched her disappear into the crowd, and for some reason, I knew. That was it. No dramatic goodbye. No final confession. No happy ending. Just the end. Years have passed since then. Sometimes I still think about her. Not every day, not even every month, but sometimes. And whenever I do, I remember one thing. I didn't lose the love of my life. I lost the possibility of what could have been. And sometimes, that's even harder to forget, because reality ends. But possibilities live forever. And maybe that's why some people stay in your heart long after they've left your life. Not because they were yours, but because for a brief moment, you wish they could have been.